welcome to this session where we will be focusing on all things hygiene production. I'm Wendy Briggs, and I know I probably know many of you. I have friends and colleagues that are joining us today, and I've already been able to hear really great insights or diamonds, if you will, from the other presenters so far, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the day. But let me just take a quick minute and introduce myself. I'm a hygienist first and foremost, and my dental story begins when I was a young teenager, invited to work in a dental office. I worked as a dental assistant, went to college, and started getting prerequisites busted out for hygiene school. And then I got accepted to hygiene school. And literally several weeks after I got accepted to hygiene school, I learned I was also expecting my first child, right? So here was this time of heightened excitement. And then a curveball was thrown at me like life does sometimes. And although we were delighted to be welcoming this baby into our families, it gave me a lot of uncertainty about what things would look like once I graduated from hygiene school. So we added our little Katie to our family while I was in hygiene school. And therefore I graduated from hygiene school with a young family. My husband had yet to go to school. And there was a lot of things that I was in need of at that time. You know, sometimes you graduate from hygiene school and you think you're ready to conquer the world. Well, I knew that things were going to be tough initially. And really what I needed at that point in my life and in my career was not what to do. And I found there were plenty of voices telling us as a profession what we should be doing, right? Hygiene should be 30% of practice revenue. Hygiene should be doing perio codes between 20 and 30%. You know, those are things that everybody was talking about. Hygiene should be 30% of the total practice production. But in my world, I was having difficulty figuring out how to do those things, right? Why should I worry about the numbers? Because at that time, it was considered taboo, right? Hygienists were the wrong kind of a hygienist if they worried at all about their productivity. And so I found myself at a crossroads where I needed help and support and guidance that just didn't exist as far as I knew at that time. So I began my quest, right? I started looking for those diamonds, if you will. Not only what to do for patients, but how to overcome the objections. Why should patients embrace these services, especially patients that come through the door and the first thing they say is, hey, just so you know, I'm really not interested in any services that are not covered by insurance. You know, that's what I needed at that time. And so I spent a lot of time and effort looking for those things, right? So my family grew as I started this quest and learned how to have a better future than what I had had as a hygiene provider in the past, how to provide a better future for my patients than what I knew in the past. And as I started this journey, I learned a few really important diamonds, right? My family grew. I grew as a provider. I grew as a professional. And Hygiene Diamonds was formed after other colleagues and friends asked me to share with them what I had learned and applied for myself. So fast forward, I learned a lot more along that journey as I established Hygiene Diamonds. And then about 10 years ago, 12 years ago now, I joined forces with Dr. John Meese and we created the Team Training Institute. So now Hygiene Diamonds supplies all of the hygiene components and the hygiene coaching for the Team Training Institute. And you'll get to hear from Dr. John later on. And this journey has been an incredible ride. And along the way, we've learned all sorts of diamonds that can help us elevate patient care. And when we focus on increasing hygiene production per visit, as Dental Intel shows us on the dashboard, what I want all of you to know is that as a hygiene provider, for me, it's really important that we understand that this approach, our approach and what we teach in this lecture today is going to be about doing this the right way. In my mind, production was never the goal. Instead, production was the result that comes when we do the right thing for the patient. So I found some really important lessons early on, and that was that for me, I wasn't willing to sacrifice the quality of care for quantity, that my patients always came first, right? That was part of my why. I woke up every morning to take really great care of my patients. And that culture and that heart and that why has transitioned into the Team Training Institute. And so it's really been a great journey. Dr. John, if you're with us, he follows me directly. And he always brags about he's a 4th generation dentist. And I love his dental story. So this is my family. I grew to end up having 4 kids. And ultimately, two of them are in the dental profession right now. My daughter is a practicing hygienist. And so we're working on our third generation. This is Tom, this is Jane, these are my grandbabies, and they don't know it yet, but they're going to be dentists. Jane already represents the whole diamonds theme whenever she can. She's a girly girl. And our third backup, right? We always have to have a few spares in case they determine dentistry is not their future. We added baby Claire just before Christmas, and it's been a great journey. So that's my story. And I'm really delighted to share some of the lessons I learned over that process with you here today. And hopefully, just like I did, some of these diamonds will help you have a bigger future than you've had in the past. I love this quote by Russell Conwell, Acres of Diamonds. Your diamonds are not in far distant mountains or in yonder seas. They are in your own backyard if you but dig for them. Right? So today we're going to go mining for diamonds. We're going to dig for some diamonds that already exist in your practices. They're beneath your very feet. And what we're going to help you see is how to go about your day-to-day operations, your day-to-day service for patients in a different way. Right? And that will help you understand and uncover some of those diamonds that exist already. We often hear from doctors about frustrations about where they are with metrics, where they are with their practice. Here's an example. I've not been happy with my hygienist metrics, right? My KPIs are okay, but my hygienist metrics are not improving. The acceptance and diagnostics look okay, but production per hour procedure always looks low. I'm not sure if this is because I'm a PPO office or if it's just that my hygienists aren't being proactive. Can you look at this and give me your feedback, right? So this is something that we commonly hear, and this is something that we actually identify quite a bit in dental intel when we first bring on or onboard a practice. Hygienist metrics can sometimes look low. The diagnostics and acceptance, actually, one of the first things we hear from hygienists and their teams is those numbers can't be right, right? It can't be right. There's got to be something wrong with the data or wrong with how the numbers are aggregated or how we're utilizing our software. And sometimes after adjustments, they look a little bit better, but almost always they are right. Because there's many hygienists that, like me, knew what to do, but we didn't have particular guidance on why we should or how to get these things done consistently in a manner that showed top-notch performance, right? Another alarming trend that I'm seeing right now is a lot of dentists saying that the current model of hygiene is broken, right? As insurance reimbursements are slashed and we have fewer insurance companies actually paying decently well on hygiene services, some practices have said, you know what, I'm just going to do the hygiene myself, or I'm going to have an associate do hygiene. That's way more profitable. Even doing hygiene myself is way more productive. And some of it's because there's a shortage of hygienists. Some of it's because the hygiene salaries have grown beyond the current thinking in how to maximize that provider. So if you have heard some of this chatter, I would like to share a different perspective. Now, here's another thing that I've learned. There are certainly many, many ways to practice dentistry, and we do not pretend to have all the answers. There's not a one-size-fits-all model out there. But what I do want to share with you is some principles that regardless of the model you're choosing to operate at this time, regardless of the model that's working in your practice, or regardless of what you're doing in your practice right now, whether it's having hygienists, having associates do hygiene, whoever's doing hygiene can elevate their own patient care in a powerful way. So I want to share with you how we think about hygiene and how we help hygienists know how to maximize these valuable providers day in and day out to really serve their patients better. So this is a great formula shared with us by our friends at Dental Intelligence. I'm sure many of you have seen this before. And what I want to do is share with you how we think about this formula and how we can inspire changes within this formula. So when it comes down to evaluating how we're utilizing hygiene resources, and if we are looking to increase our hygiene revenue, really we see one of two prevailing strategies. We can focus on increasing the number of visits. And Amy did a great job talking about patient retention and how important that is. That's one way we can increase the number of patient visits. Or we can look at production per visit. And sometimes we can do both, right? So if you're looking at increasing the number of visits, one strategy that we're seeing gaining traction in some practices is to shorten the appointment times down for hygiene. Okay, if we do that, we will see an increase in production. Obviously, because dentistry is a business of flow, right? The more patients we have in, the more flow there is and the more production we will see day to day. However, we are seeing some alarming things with this trend. This is an actual advertisement for a hygienist in Georgia, and I want to share with you just some of the statements in this ad. This is a privately owned boutique-style dental office, rapidly growing practice, and provide quality care with 30-minute appointments. So I've been a hygienist for a long time, long enough that my daughter is now a hygienist, right? So here's the thing. I think, in my opinion, that is really difficult to do. It's incredibly difficult to provide quality care in a 30-minute appointment, right? So what we see is more focus. What we prefer is more of a focus on the production per visit. Now, certainly we want systems in place to guide patient retention. We want to minimize no-shows and cancellations. We want to go after those patients on the unscheduled list. And that is a way that we can leverage patient visits. But our approach is not to shorten the hygienist appointment time. Instead, we focus on production per visit, right? And just like I learned, many hygienists need more than just what we want them to do. They need why they should, right? And how to get that done consistently, how to overcome patient objections, how to incorporate these systems and these services into their already limited appointment time. When we do that, amazing things happen. So many hygienists need the what, they need the why, and they need the how, if we're really going to be focusing in on the production per visit. Now, here's why I think so many practices go the easier route of shortening the appointment times down, is because they don't know how to leverage increasing the production per visit. Again, for me, one of the first whys I learned is that patients deserve the very best we can give them. And if we can all take a minute, I know some of you are active in the chat. If you can all just agree with me for a minute, can we all agree that patients deserve the very best we can give them? If you agree to that, write yes in the chat. Shout it loud and proud. Yes, patients deserve the very best we can give them. And if that's true, then what you will see is that if we do what's right for the patient, the production will follow that. Okay, that is what we see. We definitely see that hygienists who are absolutely focused in on doing the best thing possible for the patient see an impact in their productivity, and it doesn't take very much time for that to happen. Okay, so what we bring to hygiene providers is not only what they should be doing, but why they should and how to do those things consistently. Okay, so more important or easier than me telling you, I'm going to actually walk you through the process of how we help practices mine for diamonds in their own backyard. Okay, so one of the first things we do is we talk about the role of hygienists as a preventive therapist, right? This is really, I think, the most impactful way, the most impactful area to focus on to get a fast return. So we all often talk about how in our approach is to go after the easiest things first. So something that's going to give a powerful return on investment, that's easy to influence or easy to have an impact. That's where we begin our focus. So one of the things that we do is we focus on the role of a preventive therapist. There's another important role for hygienists, and that is the role of a periodontal therapist. And we'll touch on that today a little bit as well. The third role, which is also important, is that of a role of a treatment advocate. Dr. John's going to be speaking about this more completely than I am today, but one of the things that we find is many times hygienists aren't really aligned with the doctor. We don't have systems in place in many practices to help us know how to better preheat the patient for the doctor in regards to restorative dentistry. Again, when we think about it, hygienists, when we were in hygiene school, how many of us had a course or program designed to prepare us to discuss restorative treatment? Many times the answer is no, nobody, right? So this is the challenge that we run into, is this is an important role. More than 70% of all restorative dentistry is referred from hygiene, but we rarely have systems or processes or spend a lot of time and energy on this role in the practices. So we're not going to get into too much of that today, but Dr. John's going to have some more diamonds for you on that as we go. So when we start to focus on the role of a preventive therapist, another quote that we love, is the guiding light for us, is that excellence is to do a common thing in an uncommon way, right? So here we are, the basic fundamentals in hygiene. What can we really change? How much more can we really do differently? how much more can we really bring to the table that we haven't already done, especially those of us hygienists that have been in the trenches for a long time? Well, that's what we're going to talk about here, right? So we feel that there's absolutely a way to approach these common fundamental tasks in an uncommon way. And I feel the best way for me to share with you what to do, why you should do it, and how to get it done is to walk you through a few case studies. So our first case study is going to be with this practice right here. It's an established multi-doctor busy practice in Ohio. And I mean busy. They were so busy because for 8 years, they had focused on new patients, new patients, new patients. They had spent a considerable amount of time and energy and resources on marketing and capturing those new patients. They had really dialed in on increasing the number of patient encounters or the patient visits component. So then COVID hit, and this practice reached out to us because they felt that they needed some guidance and direction on a better way forward, right? We all know how hard dentistry was hit. And I really love the heart behind that. Thank you that Dental Intel and Jerem played at the very beginning, because many of us had never experienced anything like that in our professional careers. The good news is a recent article published just this week from Dentistry Today states that more than 50% now of all practices are back to, are basically open and business as usual. Okay, so that's huge. But what that also means is that there's still 48.5% that are open but have fewer patient volume than usual. So we are still in the process of recovery as a profession. Well, these two doctors realized, this practice realized that they saw opportunity in the clouds, but they wanted some more clarity on how they could leverage their assets, the patients that they had built, that they had spent 8 years going after, the solid team that they had, but they also knew that they had grown and they wanted some guidance on how to see their way forward. So we began working with them. And one of the first things that they talked about is it seemed that they were spending a lot more money on marketing and getting less of a return on that. Their cost of acquisition was rising. They were having patients coming in the door, but that number had fallen dramatically over the recent months and certainly over the last few years. So they wanted us to focus on production per visit. And when we identified their practice and we went through an audit, we absolutely identified this was one of the easiest places to begin, right? We want the easiest return on investment with the least amount of effort. So that's where we began to focus. And we made a real solid introduction to all of their hygienists. They have an amazing hygiene team and a lot of hygienists. Again, it was a busy, large, multi-doctor practice. And when you see their production per visit wasn't poor when we began, there's a lot of good things already happening in this practice, right? To have hygiene production per visit over 200, over 160 is even doing fairly well as a practice. But we also recognize that there were some opportunities to improve that. And again, these are kind of where they were averaging. This is not just 1 month at a time. Okay, so this is for all of us to see that this practice was already doing a lot of things very, very well. But we came in and we thought, okay, what can we really do to help this team move forward? Well, we saw opportunities in them maximizing their roles as preventive therapists. So we visited with this practice and we helped them see the importance of preventive therapy. And I want to share with you, over recent years, we've seen some changes. We've had a realization as a profession that dental caries is a reversible dynamic biochemical event at a micron level. And as a result, this realization has changed the way our profession recognizes caries and the caries lesions as they exist. Historically, lesions were identified and treatment planned, right? And in many practices, this is still the case. Doctors come in, say cavity, here's the solution. This is a cavity, we need to do a filling. This is a cracked tooth, we need to do a crown, right? So historically, we still identify the lesion and treatment plan. Well, what if we could take a step back as a profession? And instead of just identifying and diagnosing the treatment, we take a step back and identify, are we dealing with caries or a disease? So maximizing our roles as preventive therapists helps us to understand that the process to pathology actually occurs over a period of time and is affected by numerous variables, right? In order for us to achieve the goal of best management options for the patients, we've been advised that a shift in disease paradigm needs to happen. So we need to, instead of identifying the lesion and the treatment, ask why the disease started and really begin to become partners with our patients who have disease, who have chronic infection especially, and stop and diagnose and treat dental caries as a disease. And when we do this, amazing things happen. Okay, so as a profession, we need to be evolved. Now, I was able to listen in last night, and this was Dr. Gordon Christensen's lecture, and I was brazen. I took a screenshot, and the reason I took a screenshot is because I wanted those who may not have listened last night to be able to see what he said about hygienists in today's world, because I don't think we could be more aligned. Right? Other than conventional dental hygiene clinical techniques, the major responsibility of dental hygienists is to educate patients about all areas of dentistry. Okay, so this is our calling, right? This is what we should be doing, educating our patients about all areas. And for many patients, it's a delicate balance, right? I envision an old-fashioned scale. And for every risk factor that patient has in their day-to-day, that scale goes out of balance. Okay, so part of our conversation is what risks exist in their mouth. This is how we elevate our level of performance or elevate our focus on our roles as preventive therapists. So this conversation happens in hygiene. We can have a higher level conversation with patients about their day-to-day risks. What risk factors do they have? And we know it's not just the sugar in these beverages now that we need to be concerned about. It's the pH threshold. So back in the day, patients would look at me and say, yeah, I drink soda, but it's diet, right? So that conversation has changed. Now that we know what we know today, we know it's a pH threat, in addition to the sugar content that we need to be concerned about. I've also read studies about during the COVID crisis, many patients, many more than usual, have started to drink some of these beverages. They've had to subsist or exist on Monsters and Red Bulls and energy drinks. And it's $1 billion industry that's only growing more and more. But look at the sugar content of many of these beverages. It's really shocking how many grams of sugar they have, but even more shocking is the pH threshold, right? So many of these beverages are well below the threshold for enamel demineralization. Taking you clear back to cavities 101 here for a minute. Enamel demineralizes once the pH is below a 5.5. And many of these beverages are well below that pH threshold before we even take into account the sugar content. So we are the ones on the front lines with our patients having these conversations. I love this image: drink water instead of sugary drinks. However, we know that even many brands of bottled water have a low pH. Dasani is almost as acidic as Coke and Pepsi. So our patients have these threats that are constant. And it used to be only Starbucks would sell the super sugary drinks, right? But now they're everywhere. So our patients are under constant attack, and they often don't know what they don't know. And this is where we come in. We can help educate and inspire these high-risk patients to a higher level of care. And there's a whole list of things we can provide to these patients that are under constant attack. A way that we can help reduce the bacterial load, a way that we can neutralize the pH of the oral environment, a way that we can equip them and empower them with better tools to make better decisions day to day. Well, this is what we focused on with this first practice in the case study. And interestingly enough, Dr. Christensen tried to show a video from our practical clinical course that we did together called Optimizing Hygiene to the Next Level. And he was having some audio struggles, but I still took a screenshot of that, right? One of the things that we talked about in that session is how we as hygienists can maximize all of the preventive services that we already have on the menu in our practices at a much higher level than we do now. And this is also what we shared with this practice in the first case study. And the impact was immediate and powerful. So immediately we started seeing changes in their production per visit. And this was exciting for everyone involved, right? How did we do this? Again, focused on those preventive services. And just in case, just to help you see, they had an immediate impact in their production per visit. Even the lowest performer jumped up considerably, right? So before, I think our highest was right around 200. So some of our providers had more than a $60 jump per visit. And when you take that up and you add it over all of the hygienists, over every day, every week, every month, every year, the impact is staggering. Okay, so I wanted to share with you, more of how we did that. And just so you think, gosh, it was just all about fluoride. They were already performing very well on fluoride before we got there. Here was their fluoride performance before we began working with this team. And here's their fluoride performance after. So yes, there was an increase, right? There was a considerable increase. We have some providers that are at 100%, which is remarkable. Way to go, right? Many over the 80% target. In fact, almost everybody is at that 80% target. So they all saw tremendous progress when it comes to fluoride. But just in case you're thinking in the back of your mind, we already do that. Our hygienists already offer fluoride to everybody. There's so much more than fluoride that can help move the needle. We often look at their same day impact. So again, there was already a lot of good things happening in regards to same day with this team, but we knew that focusing on their role as a preventive therapist could make it better, and it sure did, right? So there's so many things that you can be talking about in regards to preventive services. It's not just about the fluoride. Now, for many providers though, if we're not currently offering fluoride, talking about fluoride is a great place to begin, because when we look at the science, when we look at the why, we often can identify that just about every single adult patient would benefit from fluoride. And this is why I love what we do. When we talk about elevating production per visit in hygiene the right way, it's always about making necessary recommendations. There's never any need to talk about unnecessary care. And I really loved what Dr. Brian said last night, where nobody wants to be sold, but everybody wants to be served. I don't think those were his exact words, but that was the heart of what he was saying. And I think that's so true. As hygienists, we often get a little bit reluctant or uneasy about selling things to our patient unless we realize these are necessary things, right? Especially if we do the risk assessment and we identify where the patient is and what tools do we have that can help that patient. It's an amazing thing that happens. And patients absolutely embrace that. They want that. They appreciate that. So there's power in that. So here's this amazing team with Bert, who is their hygiene coach. In September, a few months after they started going, they really raised their hand and wanted to get started in about June. But Bert was able to visit them when some of the COVID regulations changed. And then I want you to see what happened in their journey. So this is year over year. And you can see, hey, this is when they were mainly shut down, started to come back. And in June, they hit the ground running, and they've just had tremendous growth since that time. I don't know if you can see up close, so I'll show you again, but here was where they were in June. And you can see as a hygiene team, a lot of things already happening very, very effectively. However, the first month of embracing their role as preventive therapists and really taking on risk assessment, recommending treatment to patients that would benefit them, they were up $22,000 the very first month. Here was August, they were up $75,000. It just continued to grow after that. I skipped over September because October was just a powerhouse. Good heavens, up $101,000 in October from where they began. And as you see at what did they do? Well, they had improved their fluoride acceptance. They utilized sealants at a higher level. They utilized Seal and Protect at a higher level, but really they still have so much room to continue this growth, right? So these are all things that can help elevate patient care. And in the first 4 months of really focusing in on their roles as preventive therapists, they were up more than $200,000 in the first 4 months. So it's powerful, the change that can happen. And again, I just have to celebrate this team because look at that October. Wow, amazing, amazing things happened. In October, they also happened to introduce a short-term incentive for all of the team to keep patients in this schedule. So October, in this practice, if we look at it from a case study standpoint, proves the impact of focusing on visits plus production per visit. You can have the best of both worlds in your practices. And again, that's remarkable to have that level of production, especially when you compare it with where they were in 2019. Awesome, awesome job with this practice. And Dr. Bradich said, we've realized tremendous growth. Our hygienists have become preventive therapists and true advocates for our patients. And they absolutely love it, right? It's a powerful thing, what has happened. So I love this quote: be like a diamond, precious and rare, not like a stone that is found everywhere. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. When we embrace our roles as hygiene providers, we are trying to be like a diamond. We are precious, we are rare. We are helping our patients who are also precious and rare have a better dental future than they've had in the past. Love, love, love that focus. Okay, here's another frustration that we hear. What percentage of our hygiene production should be perio procedures? Any good strategies for raising that number? We've got a great practice and wonderful staff, but my perio percentage is so low, frankly, I'm embarrassed to share it. I know the opportunities are there for more treatment. I'm not looking to get creative or flexible with treatment planning standards, right? We know what that means. So here's what we often hear. We hear this from dentists all the time. Perio is really a struggle. We see a big opportunity with perio, but we don't know how to change that. And we don't want to find perio where perio doesn't exist. And the good news is you don't have to, right? We all know, I think more than ever, how important the role of a periodontal therapist is in our practices, especially given the data that's come out since COVID. So in October of last year, there was a peer-reviewed article published saying that patients with periodontitis face greater risk of dying from COVID-19. And we all know the why, right? But I think this is amazing to have peer-reviewed studies that prove, without a doubt, that inflammation in the body and inflammation with periodontal disease are not healthy. And our patients face greater risks of all sorts of diseases and illnesses, not just COVID-19. The list goes on and on. I just read a study published by Tufts that says severe gum disease represents a 37% higher risk of cancer. So that's huge for our patients. But now more than ever, we should be shouting this from the rooftops, right? There is a connection between health in the mouth and increased complications with COVID-19. So this is a tremendous research that we have. And again, this is another example that was published in January of this year about the data, right? The data behind periodontitis and severity of COVID-19. And they've done several case control studies, and they've been able to do research where they're sharing specific numbers, right? Specific data points. The conclusion of this study was that periodontitis was significantly associated with a higher risk of complications from COVID-19, including ICU admission, need for ventilation, and death. One of the articles stated that the risk of death was 900% higher with severe gum disease and COVID-19 than a patient that does not have severe gum disease. Now, this is incredible. So what this does for me is it brings to a sharper focus the need for better periodontal systems in our practices. And I can tell you that we've known for a long time that this is a problem for many of our patients. We know this is a problem. We see it in the data. But this is one of the reasons it is a problem, because we also see patients posting things like this. Is there such a thing as a dentist who will simply do a cleaning? I don't want all the extras. I just want a cleaning. I went a few years ago and was essentially shamed into a deep cleaning, charged hundreds of dollars more than the estimated bill. Went back to them this morning. They started the same stuff. Need to know everything about my medical history. And of course, it's been so long. Now I have to have this cleaning again and come back every 3 months to maintain it, right? Sorry, I thought I edited out all of the language, but I missed one. I went 12 years without seeing a dentist, and I had one tiny cavity. I don't have bad dental health. I just have bad dental experiences. We've all had these patients. A few warning signs here, right? They went 12 years without visiting a dentist, but they still think they have good dental health. So something is broken here. Something is broken in our method of communicating with our patients about what they have, why they need what they need. This patient thought she was shamed into a deep cleaning. Rather than realizing I was diagnosed with periodontal disease, she thought she was given an upsell for a deep cleaning. So our role as periodontal therapists is super important, saving teeth versus saving lives. And you might think that that's being overly dramatic, but with all the data we have about COVID-19, I don't think it is, right? This really is our role. And we all know what to do here with these patients. And most of the time, these patients are the ones who own their problem. They know they have disease. They see the symptoms. They see the signs. But we often struggle with what to do here. with a patient who's just starting to experience the earliest warning signs of gingival inflammation. This is where we struggle. Not quite healthy, not quite gum disease. What do we do? And as a profession, what to do, why we should do it, and how to do it has never been more confusing, right? So the how when it comes to perio is super confusing because not too long ago in 2017, most places began to embrace these new tools and use them in 2019. They changed everything. The classification standards changed. Now we're looking at staging and grading. We're having to provide a stage and a grade for every patient. Many practices are still utilizing the same perio classifications that they learned in school. So it's never been more difficult. And a lot of the resources we're given are confusing and create a higher level of confusion, which means a lower level of diagnostic percentages, of acceptance percentages, lower perio visit percentages for all of us. So I think in some ways we've gone backwards. And what we do here is we help provide simplified processes. Simplicity is key. So your teams, your hygiene teams need simple tools that can help them better assess where the patient is. That can guide them towards identifying a stage and a grade in a few minutes of time. You know, if you were to follow the step-by-step process that are the official published tools, some of those can take literally 20, 30 minutes to walk the patient through that. So we need tools that can help us do these in an efficient way. We need to simplify the process. 3 steps to staging and grading a patient. Simplify the process. Make it easier on your teams. We have a process that we work with hygienists on, which is 5 steps to case acceptance. We simplify the entire conversation. We use technology, right? Last night, both Dr. Christensen and Dr. Bryan talked about how important it was to have technology to identify, our cameras. They both talked about how important they are, and we could not agree more. So we talk all teams, all hygienists through 5 simple steps to improving our case acceptance of periodontal disease. It not only improves the acceptance percentage, but it also improves the diagnostic percentage, because when we know what to look for, it improves our ability to find it. When we commit to these simple steps, we'll see our perio performance improve, which also improves our hygiene production per visit. It's all connected. It's all linked together. So again, we can take practices that are having a struggle with their perio diagnostics. Here's a practice that had 3 providers that were 0% perio happening in the practice. And that can happen when things are so confusing. There's so much confusion that we just do bloody prophies all day long. That can happen. Okay, we can see an immediate impact in the diagnostics with better tools, with better systems, with things that are simplified. We can see a huge impact on perio visit percentage. We want to see the total number of perio visit percentage growing, improving. We want to see everyone making progress. And we always say we're looking for progress, not perfection. Okay, so this is how we do it. We make it happen. We work together. We use a team approach, and we empower your hygienists with not only what to do, but why they should, and then the tools that help them know how to have the conversation with the patients, how to assess every single patient. Just because they're on the schedule for prophy doesn't mean that's what they need, but they need to know how to convert that patient, even a long time patient, into a higher level of care without the angry posts on the internet, with a patient feeling like they've been upsold to something they didn't need, right? So this is a really critical thing. And I wish we could spend more time on this topic, because I know there's probably so many questions about it. And I can tell you that I love this quote by John Wooden: "It takes time to create excellence. If it could be done quickly, more people would do it." And when it comes to periodontal systems, I can tell you it takes us a considerable amount of time. The perio stuff, we come in and after one day, immediate impact, immediate change to the ROI. The periodontal systems are a little bit more challenging. They take a little bit more time, a little bit more energy to create that level of excellence that we're all seeking to accomplish. But I can tell you it does come with time. Be patient with yourselves. I think too often we have very unrealistic expectations of ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why maybe those numbers hurt so much when we first open Dental Intel and look at where we're performing and we see our diagnostics at 0 with perio, and we have to think, well, that can't be right. So give yourselves a little grace, because what we do every day is challenging. It's difficult. So it does take time to create excellence, but we know you can do it. Another frustration, another question we often get is, those of you that lead the hygiene department, whether you're the dentist, the hygienist manager, the lead hygienist, how do you motivate and hold your team accountable for their production? Like, how do you hold that accountable, make them accountable long-term? Well, again, we love the resources that dental intelligence brings, because like Jerem said, in the discussion at the end of the last hour, sometimes just knowing the score helps us perform differently. What gets measured improves. And knowing the score can change behaviors. But let me share with you another case study that's powerful. This is a case study number 2. And this is a doctor who first implemented our hygiene concepts more than 10 years ago. So even today, when they reached back out and revisited, they were already doing amazing things in hygiene. This was their production per visit before we got there for the second round. So a lot of things were still happening very, very well. But they noticed that they had tended to slide backwards a little bit. They had new team members, a new doctor that really didn't know the difference between the old way and our new way of thinking. And they also had seen some cracks in their initial foundation. So it was time to re-engage, right? They needed to bring everybody up to the same speed, and they added dental intel to help hold team accountable and to help measure the progress of what was working and what was not working in the practice. So we started with the why, just like we've talked about here today. We got everybody to understand the science behind the services, why patients need that, risk assessment, how all of those things fit together. And in this practice, we focused a lot on additional services, beyond the fluoride. They're already doing super well with fluoride. We got everybody up to the same page on sealants and how sealants can be utilized in a practice. Because of their simplicity and effectiveness from a health standpoint, sealants make excellent sense for both children and adults. That's from the ADA. And I see conversations and discussions about this all the time, right? Why sealants on adults? Well, we recognized already a lot of our patients are at higher risk, right? They're at higher risk for disease. And if we take that step back and we diagnose the patient with caries, a disease, then they're going to need some things done differently. So individuals 40 years and older, especially if they're on medications that cause dry mouth, drug-induced dry mouth is a real threat for many of our patients. This may increase their risk for caries. We know this. So here's Dr. David Gore saying dental sealants can inhibit the advancement of caries in many of these cases and may be the treatment of choice for borderline carious lesions. There is power in offering these services. When we deal with that drug-induced dry mouth patient, what treatment recommendations are there? Well, Pharmacy Times magazine said patients should see a dentist and have fluoride-containing sealants applied to pits, fissures, and even rough restorative margins. And then it goes on to talk about fluoride varnish and xylitol and some of the other things that we definitely talk about. So when we bring everybody up to speed on why these services matter, and then we talk about how to get these done consistently. So exposed surfaces are sensitive and vulnerable, right? Those exposed root surfaces, as shown here, will demineralize at a pH threshold of 6.5. So that's slightly below neutral, which is 7. So what if we could place a sealant on those vulnerable areas? What if we could apply a product that would actually use nanotechnology and penetrate into those tubules and seal off that area, releasing fluoride, protecting it against further damage? Well, we can. And that's one of the things that we talked about with this other practice. We help their providers see how to protect these surfaces when it's appropriate, because we want to catch things as preventive therapists. We want to catch things at the 1 or 2 stage, not wait until they've devolved into the 5 or 6 stage, right? So these are the things that we worked on with this team of hygiene providers. And look at the impact. In February, which is a shortened month, they protected 349 teeth with a seal and protect type service. That is incredible, right? So these providers dramatically improved their production per visit, even though they were already doing some things very, very well. Remember, this is where they were before, and this is where they are now. They are powerhouses. And that slight increase, even though per visit, it might not seem super significant, every visit, every day, every week, every month, every year, it adds up to tremendous progress for that practice. So here's how we hold hygiene teams accountable. We help them see what to do, why they should do it, and how to get them done consistently. But then this is a tool that our coaches use. We call this our hygiene success loop. And we pull data from Dental Intel in all of the key metrics that we feel will drive hygienists' performances forward. We want your hygiene team to have a better future than they've had in the past. We want to help them fast track those results. That's what we do, right? We want them to uncover those diamonds, those acres of diamonds that exist beneath your feet. We also want the same thing for patients. We want patients to have a better dental future than they've had in the past. But let's be honest, if we keep doing the same things, the same old way, what are we going to get? The same result, right? So sometimes patients need to have clarity on the fact that if they really want to have a different future, just because they've always had a struggle in the past doesn't mean they always will, that they need to start doing things differently too. So I have to brag on my daughter for a moment, right? My daughter's a practicing hygienist, as I mentioned earlier, and she called me this last week and we had a conversation about a patient that she had in her chair. And she started walking this patient through the tools, the risk assessment, and having a higher level conversation with this patient about where they were and some risk factors that were concerning. And the patient looked to my daughter and said, you know, at this stage in my life, I am very interested in prevention. I would love to know about anything that you feel would benefit me in my life. And so therefore, Katie was able to do sealant same day. She did some seal and protect services. You know, when you begin that conversation, patients appreciate it. And this patient at the end of the appointment said, thank you for taking such good care of me. And there's incredible value there. So way to go on that. And that's what we see on that. When we see hygienists embrace their role, their productive capacity grows exponentially. So what we love to see, a model that we know that's working in dentistry today, is to empower your hygiene team. Help them know how they can maximize their roles as preventive therapists, periodontal therapists, and patient treatment advocates. And they can be radically productive for you, right? So the feeling that it's more productive for the dentist to do hygiene, in our experience, in many practices that we coach, it's absolutely not possible to grow the practice as exponentially as you can when you have qualified hygienists in place. This is the model that we see works best for the practices that we coach. Okay, so again, there's not a one size fits all, but we know that hygienists are doing amazing things. So one of the resources that I wanted to make available before we jump into questions is this 3 roles of hygiene, a step-by-step system to maximize production. And this is something that we've fairly recently created to help practices know how they can jumpstart their own hygiene performance in their practices. And I want to make this available. And I'm not sure if we can share this later on, Jerem, with them in the chat or as they register for their CE credits for this course. But all you have to do is go to www.doublehygieneproduction.com, and you'll be able to download this report on how to get started with these systems. And of course, we're always available. Dr. John and myself, we do several virtual programs ourselves. We have an amazing annual summit coming up May 14th and 15th for those that are ready to meet in person. That will be in Dallas, and we're having it in person. We're following all the recommended protocols to keep people as safe as possible. So there's plenty of opportunities that we have to engage with you. You're welcome to visit our website. But this is a great and easy way to get started on how to improve your hygiene production per visit. And I want to leave you with this thought, Jerem, and then I'll unshare my screen so we can handle. I know there's been a few hands raised and a few questions as we've gone along. I want to leave you with this thought. Again, mining for diamonds, increasing our production per visit the right way in hygiene was our topic today. And just like Russell Conwell says, your diamonds are not in far distant mountains or in yonder seas. They are in your own backyard. And we are so proud of so many amazing providers across the country and across the world, really, that are doing everything they can to elevate their patient care. We could not be more proud of you. We could not be more proud of being a part of your journey and seeing the amazing things you're doing every day. And again, there is a way to do it the right way. You can focus on the number of visits and the production per visit the right way elevate patient care, provide world-class level of service in your practice, and reap the benefit as a result. So we know it's possible. We see it happen every day, and we're just delighted to be a part of your journey. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Jeremiah, I can't see the questions while I'm talking, but I can see a few here. So would you like me to answer those? Do you want to moderate that? How do you want to do it?
Nope, you go ahead. I've got them all right here as well. So the ones you miss, I'll surface back up and make sure we get them answered.
Okay, great. So the first one is, what are we using to seal the roots or provide a root sealant? There's several products out there. And I always look to Gordon Christensen and CRA. He's a tremendous resource and a tremendous asset to our profession. You know, what a gift that I've been able to visit with him in person and work closely with him. And we've done a couple programs together. I always look to CRA, and I subscribe to the hygiene report and literally pour over that every single month. There are specific recommendations made in that newsletter. The two top products right now, Seal and Protect by Dentsply, which is a little bit, I'm gonna let you know that it's been back ordered for several months. They've had a little bit of disruption to their supply chain, as COVID has done. Personally, I get it. There's difficulty sometimes even just securing the plastic bottles from China right now. So there's some products that are out of stock. Seal and Protect by Dentsply is on back order right now. There's another option that lasts a long time, and this is Brush and Bond by Parkel. Again, look for the products that release fluoride, and those two are our favorites because they last the longest in the mouth. So again, we don't want to just slap something on there that only provides benefit for a week or two. So that's what I'm looking at. I want something that releases fluoride that has longevity. And both of those work on at the micron level. They're using nanotechnology to go in and microscopically fill those tubules. So it provides a longer lasting impact. So that was a great question on that. Let's see. I'm not sure I'm seeing other questions, Jeremy. So what else have you got there?
Why do you say a patient with gingivitis does not have gum disease? That was at the very beginning.
Yeah, so no problem. So, you know, gingivitis is a form of inflammation. It's a form of gum disease, but I think gingivitis and periodontitis are two separate things, right? So they need to be classified separately. A patient with gingivitis may need something different than a healthy patient, certainly, but they don't need scaling and root planing. There's no way to scale and root plane a pocket that doesn't exist yet. So patients with gingivitis need something different. They may need a prescription strength mouth rinse to use every day. They may need power tools. They may need more frequent visits. They certainly, we can code that out under the new code 4346, but they're not going to need the same therapy as a periodontitis patient. So certainly I agree, a patient with gingivitis needs something more than a prophy, but they probably don't need scaling root planing yet, right? So having a systematic process in your practice to help hygienists know when it's time to do this procedure, when it's time to do periodontitis and those types of procedures is part of how we help hygienists and help practices move forward. They need clarity. And too often, the rules that we have for classifying, staging, and grading bring more confusion than clarity. And so one of the things that many practices need to do is really sit down and have a discussion about when they feel it's time to do something more for the patient. You know, years ago, we would just submit scaling and root planing to an insurance company and get paid for it. And that's no longer true. You know, so insurance companies, if there's not clinical attachment loss, if there's not bone loss, they're not going to pay you for that scaling and root planing, even if there's, you know, a massive bridge of calculus around every tooth. If there's not measurable bone loss, you're not going to get coverage for it. So periodontal therapy today is a lot more challenging and difficult than it used to be, which I think is why so many practices look at those perio numbers at the very beginning and go, what? That's not true. That can't be right. Something's wrong, right?
All right, the next one is, what kind of products are hygienists using for the 9911 application of desensitizing resin?
Yeah, so that's what we just talked about, Seal and Protect or the Brush and Bond by Parkel. Just in case the first person might have asked about actual sealants, I would say probably some other good performers in the sealant category as far as longevity and retention. We often look at, again, Dentsply has a great product, Delton FS Plus. Ultra Seal is always a favorite. We also see a lot of people liking Clean Pro. So there's a lot of that is personal preference. in those products. But again, I always look to Gordon Christensen, what's at the top of his list, and that's what we do.
Yeah. Awesome. Last one is, it looks like, can you put the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 root decay slide back up?
And what was the slide?
Can you put the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Oh, the image. Root? Yeah, okay, you bet. So the image on, give me just 1 second and I'll share it. It's a powerful image, isn't it? This shows the progression of the decay on the, oh, here we go. On this, in the same mouth. I love that, because the time for action is not once it's reached a 5 or 6, it's the 1 or 2, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a powerful, powerful tool. So with that said, I believe that image was shared by Dentsply. So let me stop that screen share again. There we go.
Perfect.